Japan is slowly going extinct due to decrease in childbirth. The number of people dying tend to be higher than the number of newborn babies being born into Japanese society. This video will explain in details what Japan society is going through, and this could happen to any other society if care is not taken. We should take caution. Too much civilization has its negative effect, and Japan, it should be a case study to other countries. Take a look at this video.
You don't hear any cars, you don't see anything, and most of the places have just been closed.
Way more people are dying in this country than being born.
A country that is closing up kindergartens and housing cares are increasing.
And if nothing changes, Japan could eventually just not exist.
If you kind of extrapolate on the numbers, it's going to happen.
When you actually look at these numbers, you see why they say that Japan could disappear.
Schools are shutting down.
Elementary schools, even junior high schools have been shut down. 1, 2, 3, 4 kids in a class.
On the right is a high school that has even shut down in the past 10 years.
It starts with the small towns and cities.
Towns will die, cities will die.
The gap between deaths and births is getting bigger.
In Japan, every city is going down.
Japan's population fell by more than 500,000 people last year. Imagine if that happens every year.
So what happens when you have so many people leaving? What does that mean for infrastructure, for public services, hospitals, schools?
And just look at this chart which shows Japan's population projected decline. The country will go from being the 11th most populous country in the world to one day there will be less people in Japan than the state of New Jersey.
Only when Elon Musk tweeted, Japan went ballistic and the government just kind of freaked out.
Elon Musk is warning Japan will cease to exist.
This is such a common sight. You have so many abandoned stores like this across the city.
I'm visiting abandoned towns and interviewing government officials.
We are going to reduce the people going out.
Japan has a huge elderly population and it's home to the longest living people.
This is what a city hall looks like when over a third of your population is over the age of 65.
Many young Japanese today don't want to get married or have babies.
Long working hours, you don't meet anybody, there's no romance.
So what happens when a town like this just completely ceases to exist?
And is a smaller population actually a problem? Well, yes.
I see depopulation as a problem.
Decreasing the birth rate means decreasing the number of labor population.
Shrinking labor force has significant consequences. GDP will decline even more.
In addition to shrinking the economy, it puts a massive strain on the country.
If labor population decreases, you have to support elderly people, so the burden gets bigger and bigger.
This is Hone Elementary School, and this is kind of an example of what happens when we don't find kind of reason or reuse purpose for elementary schools.
Jeff is a father of 2 living in Hakone. It's only about an hour or so outside of Tokyo, but it couldn't feel more different than one of the world's most crowded cities.
About 10 years ago, this elementary school shut down completely because there weren't enough students.
A lot of those children's clothes have also just kind of been shut down or combined as well.
A kid growing up here might have more elderly friends than friends their own age.
You have empty classrooms, and what kind of an interesting initiative my school took is the elementary school is 4 floors. They moved all the kids up to the top 3 floors because there were so many empty classrooms, and they used the first floor as kind of a community space for kind of the elderly in the neighborhood.
The kids in this neighborhood that would normally be zoned for this school now have to go to another one, and in some cases that could mean a 45-minute drive.
Finding kindergartens and preschools is quite a challenge for a lot of adults as well. It would have been nice to have kind of a bigger community, more kids to play around with.
It's so crazy growing up myself in the west coast of the United States. There's always more population. There's always new schools being built, new homes being built. So the idea of a community, a school, an elementary school that just didn't have enough students to the point where it had to completely shut down, it's crazy.
Jeff is an exception. See, most people in Japan are moving to bigger cities for more opportunities.
Tokyo is a wonderful place, but as you can imagine, it's really busy. Not a lot of green. I wanted to kind of expose them to more nature, kind of less structures.
A new initiative will pay parents more than $7,000 per kid to leave Tokyo.
Especially kind of the transformation and kind of work styles for a lot of people. A lot of it can be done in the office. And then commute times in Japan, it's not unusual to be an hour and a half one-way commute time.
But the truth is, it's like the chicken or the egg. See, if a town has less people and activities, you don't want to move there. And if people aren't moving there, well, it'll only get more and more isolated.
What's really common is you'll have people here in the 60s who've invested into raising their kids, owning a home in a place in a kind of the suburbs, but their kids, understandably in their 20s and 30s, will want to move out to the big city, establish their own lives, and then don't feel obliged or want to come back. And then that's where kind of the abandoned homes problems comes in.
You end up having towns with a lot of elderly people.
In a restaurant like this, you won't see any young workers. In fact, you'll see much older employees.
Another thing I notice is many abandoned homes. In fact, Japan has millions of them.
So you can see, I mean, a lot of these places have signs. They were businesses, they were open for business. And now all you see is either they're closed or they're abandoned entirely.
With young people moving to cities for better jobs, there's a huge amount of homes just sitting empty with no one wanting to buy or live in them.
They're on the rise. There are many. There are government initiatives to create what are called kind of abandoned home banks where they can be registered. But one of the big challenges these local administrations for town offices or city offices have is, number one, finding who actually owns them. So a lot of times, even if they are passed away, finding the children or who actually has the rights to those homes is also very difficult. A closed business, a business, that also just has kind of a negatively compounding effect in terms of revitalization, or there be community spirit.
I meet a local agent who's trying to revitalize the town and encouraging people to open up a business.
What she's done, she's taken a lot of kind of abandoned houses and kind of introduced businesses.
So why is Japan's birth rate decline so dramatic?
I'm in my 40s now. Our fathers kind of built Japan Inc. So they were gone after we fell asleep, so we wouldn't see them at all. They had the kind of samurai Bushido spirit that we're fighting for the company, and that has slowly changed. I think that's our generation now is kind of a generation that kind of missed out on that relationship, maybe, is trying to make up for that.
People saw their parents overworked, sacrificing a lot to work and raise a family, but the new generation is rebelling against that.
It's a big economic investment that I think even Japanese people are more interested in maybe spending on themselves just a little bit more than back in the day.
Japan wants to encourage people to have babies, so they're giving money to new moms, but many experts say that it's a losing strategy. And to really fix this problem, it will need to allow more immigrants to come and also accelerate robots in the workplace. But more on that later. I meet a professor outside of Tokyo to understand what this all means for Japan's future.
Shrinking population, shrinking labor force, and aging population has negative impact on both sides of the economy. On the demand side of the economy, so it means consumption, households, more elderly people, it means less consumption.
Japan was the second largest economy in the world, but it was surpassed by China about 10 years ago. But to stay a large economy, it will need to